What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, Johnny? How you doing?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Pretty
Yeah,
excited.
yeah. You got me clocked out earlier today, and then was able to jump on with you today. Well, here this evening. Um, so you were just out in the field doing some stuff around the.
Eh, the field's kind of stretching it. It's
eh,
right behind the house.
Well, yeah, the AO. Yeah, back in the
uh,
AO. So yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm sure a lot of people probably here recently. The area back behind my house. You go about 50 yards, you hit a creek, you go back up the hill, and there's an area back there where I recorded limbs being pulled down. And then it's also like the day before that, I pretty much found a headless squirrel down there. Um, and then I found some other bones, and then we had the branches get pulled down. And I left some eggs down there. And then the next day, there was a squirrel right behind the chicken coop. Well, I went out there, what was it now, day before yesterday, and there's a stump right before you get to the area where I found the squirrel and the limbs got pulled down. And there was a rock sitting right on top of this stump. And I'm like, hmm, that's interesting. Because obviously it's about a 4 foot stump. So something with hands put that rock there. Now there's no 100% way to know who did it or what did it. But I took that rock with me and I put it on another stump that is next to what I've been calling the goodie pile. Put a bunch of corn out there and a bunch of eggs. Well, over the course of like 2 weeks, the corn has just been slowly disappearing and none of the eggs were taken. Well, I put that rock out there. The next day I go out there to check the rock. The rock has been moved. In the video, I show that,
Yep.
it was wedged down. And then when I found it, it was unwedged and then like flipped and then like barely hanging in this other spot. I mean, it wasn't going to fall from that spot, but it definitely wasn't secure. But it was something with hands again had to manipulate that. Well, that wasn't the weirdest part. The weirdest part, well, I guess that was the weirdest part. But the other part was all the corn and all the eggs were gone. Like there was nothing left. And who knows? Maybe a hog found it. There's not a lot of hogs out here, but I have seen one on thermal before. So it was just really odd that both of those things happened the same exact night.
Yeah.
You can't. There's no way to know. Like my wife said, "Well, did you leave a camera out there? To see what got it?" And I'm like, "No," because as soon as you introduce a camera into that, I think that blows the whole thing. So the plan is to uh, keep putting stuff out there. Me and Joe talked about it earlier. I put a
Yeah.
whole bunch of dirt around the perimeter so you can tell if anything walks in there.
It's gonna leave a print.
Right. It's
Yep.
going to leave a print. And then here, I'll give it another couple of weeks, but I have plans of buying a really good camera. And this camera is going to have thermal and it's going to have regular optical. And it's a PTZ camera. So I'll be able to sit inside the house and control this camera where it
Yeah.
looks and where it turns. Now it's super expensive.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a high speed security camera.
Yes, it's
Yep.
like something that, like, I don't know, like a military installation would use, or even a mall, or, a gas pipeline company, somebody like that would use this type of camera. This
Yeah.
isn't your Ring doorbell camera.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but that's the plan. But the real reason why we're talking tonight is because I saw something. I saw, I can't remember what made me think about it. I think it was a video from L.A. Marzulli, and he was talking to Scott Carpenter. And I started thinking about the Giant of Kandahar story. Now, Joe had already talked about one aspect of this. He's got two different stories.
Yeah.
One of them is directly involved in the Giant of Kandahar,
Yep.
and the other one is a completely different story. Now, the
Yep.
plan was for Joe to tell both stories, but the second story, which comes from his close friend,
Yep.
which was he's special forces, wasn't he? Or
Uh, so he was 101st Airborne, but
okay,
yeah, with their scout platoon. So, yep.
all right. Well, Joe is pretty daggum sure that this guy is going to tell the story in his own words. So
Yeah.
Joe's just going to
Yep.
kind of go into it a little bitty bit, and then
Yep.
we're going to wait for him. And at the end, I am going. We've got a. I did a podcast with Dark Waters. Now, Dark Waters, 99% of the time, I think he does Dogman stuff. Um, we're not really into the whole Dogman genre just because we just don't have any experiences with them that we know of. But
Yeah.
I do know one really good story. And it's one of the best pictures I've ever seen. And it is of a dog man. It was actually a couple pictures. And I'm going to talk about that after Joe tells his stories. So
Yeah.
take it away there, Captain Joe.
All righty. Hey, so it's funny you brought up the thing, the reports, and man, if you go to Google, YouTube, whatever, just the internet, and type in Kandahar Giants, and there are so many different articles and whatnot about this.
Right.
But so long before I met you, um, I was on I was on a trip, a flight out west. I can't remember if I was going to help teach a long range course out in Wyoming, or we were going out to compete in one in Eastern Washington. But it was 4 or 5 years ago, and on one of my legs out of Salt Lake, I sat next to a guy, and you know, uh, and you know how veterans are, man. You kind of spot a veteran,
Right.
and so this guy, like yeah, still very clean, very you know, I hate to say, kind of got the same dress, right? From apparel that he's wearing, and so we're seated on the same row, and partway in the flight, he introduces himself, and I, introduce myself and whatnot, and asked I was military, and I was like, yes, and he was too. He told me he was Army, I said, all right, same here, and asked him where he was out of, and he said, he's, last duty station was Fort Bragg. And I was like, okay, so, I have a lot of friends in Bragg, guys who served in group there, 82nd as well, so, um, anyway, so we, I was telling, deployed out of Fort Benning and whatnot, so, um, I can't remember how we even got started on this subject of the Giants, but you were talking about about which fobs, cops, or we were at in
Let it
Afghanistan.
let everybody know what a fob is. Not
So
everybody
fobs
knows.
like a forward operating base, right? And then a cop is a combat outpost, right? Um, which is a smaller one. But anyways, um, so I was talking about, but yeah, like Salerno, which is the name of of a fob and whatnot, uh, Chapman. So, anyways, and obviously, like once you start like connecting these dots, like, all right, I've been here, he's been there, blah blah blah. Yeah, yeah, we get to talking about the mountains, and I was telling this story about, man, this big Marco Polo sheep, you know. Um, I was kind of proud of it, just because, man, this is like a world class like sheep, one of the hardest sheeps to hunt, and for civilians, just because the region of like where they live and whatnot. And then, man, he just kind of asked me this question. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "Man," he goes, "You ever hear the thing about this this giant?" And I kind of looked at him because yeah, you always hear like a rumor, and I don't know if it's something like maybe I had seen something
And
on,
this is before you had your sighting
yeah,
on the
before,
military base,
yeah,
before you were
way,
into any of this.
yeah, exactly, before any of this. So I kind of looked at him like a little, like, what the hell, and yeah, you know, but dude, I mean, man, so he starts talking about um this subject, and this particular outing that he was on, and So I'm like, all right, man. This is a group guy now, right?
Right.
Special force group. Anyways, like SFG. Right. So group guy starts talking to me about this, and I'm like, all right, man. I said, dude, I'm not going to question this guy's integrity, right? For what he's done, and for who he's served with, right? He is, top of the food chain,
He
right?
got there for a reason,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's not lying.
No. And anyway, so he starts opening up and he's like, "Oh, sir, blah blah blah." You know, he goes, "Look up these giants, man." He goes, "They're real." And the whole time I'm like, "Okay, what,
What exactly did he tell you?
so he starts talk to me about uh y- so he was asking me about like Rangers and QRF. So QRF is like a quick reaction force, right? So a lot of times Ranger elements um are used as a QRF or like a backup to groups or ODAs, SEAL,
Yeah.
Naval Special Warfare SEAL teams, on missions and things that they go on, right? Um, so, anyways, these guys, from how he explained it, they were out on a scout type mission, and so when I think about group guys, going out on something like this, I mean, yeah, it's not a large element, right? I mean, you're not talking more, a platoon, no bigger. I mean, they're like half a platoon size. But
Right.
anyways, he starts talking about them getting into a tick, which is like um, troops in contact, right, right, and with a giant, and so here we are on this flight, and he's talking to me, on the same row, and he's being very candid, and he's looking at me dead in the eye, and I didn't know like this whole story about this Kandahar Giants thing, right? I Yeah, this is before all this stuff starts coming out on, like the military press or YouTubes and all these podcasts,
Right.
right? So he's telling me this, and I'm like, oh, okay, and just the details that he was talking about, from this small group that he was with, and but he kept on urging me because you need to look into this, you need to look it up, you know, and I was like, okay,
So was he saying that
he was
he
out.
was in the QRF that
No,
responded?
no, he was asking me if I knew any of the Rangers who were part of this QRF,
Okay.
right?
I got you.
Because he was out in the field when they had this engagement, and and I didn't know any of the story. You know, he had talked about he got one of their guys first, right? They opened up on this thing, and believe me, when I say open up, these guys aren't shooting fingertips. I mean, it's center chest between the eyes. You know, um, very precise, very direct. Um, you know, type of return fire, and that's exactly what he was describing to me, and he's saying, this thing was taking it. But anyways, you know, eh, and he keeps on telling me about, this thing was large, you know, it was brought in. You need to look it up. And so I'm kind of like, I'm like, hey, dude, man, I was just a captain, like, who am I supposed to go start questioning, like where to look this up,
Yeah,
right?
where y'all got the giant at?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm not,
Is it next to the canteens?
yeah, man, I'm not going to a battalion commander or something like that. But the thing is, he was, his demeanor, from the descriptions he talked about during the engagement, like their movement to contact, things like that. Dude, these were precise details that, you're not talking about like some dude
Well,
that just read some.
supposedly before the second team got there,
Yeah,
the first team was wiped out. The second team was sent to find them.
so, and I think that's where, he was talking about this QRF, like, I don't know, like they were not they were not the QRF to look for team one.
Right.
They're out there to dispose of a problem, you know.
Right.
And but but it's so funny because this is before this topic really kind of just made its way through the internet, right? And so this is the first time I've openly talked about this, other than to you, because I've heard this subject. I've heard it from a guy who was a group dude, right? And and whatnot. But anyways, I just thought it was is very interesting timing because like yeah, I think I saw some discussion about this a month or two back on like on some other channel somewhere,
Right.
but you brought it up and asking in a question where and I was like, oh man, let me tell you, this time I was on this flight. So that was the story, man. And so it was so this guy was just very upfront. Um, it's kind of like, hey, this is what happened. Go look it up. You
Well,
know,
the thing, I probably civilians don't understand this, but like military people, just like a fishing story or a hunting story or whatever, when military people are talking to civilians, they might be like, yeah, we got hit by 100 Taliban, and it might have been like 60, something like that. It's not really going to be, they're not lying, but they're
yeah,
just, but whenever military people talk to other military people, usually it's straight across the board, and
yeah,
they're honest with each other because number one, they know people,
yeah,
just like you're talking about, you stated, y'all had things in common with the cops you were on, and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you're gonna know people. Odds are, if he tells you a crazy story,
yeah,
you're gonna know somebody who was in his unit
yep,
that either can confirm or deny that. So
yeah,
the
yeah.
fact that he was willing to open up like that, and you actually took him, you know, you didn't feel like you were being BS'd,
No, no, and you know what's so funny? I mean, so yeah, him being out of Bragg, and I'd gone through IOBC, which is infantry officer basic course, at Benning, and one of the guys that was in my course class with me, after doing his platoon leader time, whatnot, with the infantry unit, went through SF selection, and so he became a team leader, team captain. When he made the rank captain, he went through that whole pipeline and stuff like that. So I'd mentioned my buddy's name, right, and he knew exactly who it was, and
right,
whatnot. I'm like, okay, you know, and um, even down to the OD like ODA patch number,
right.
that those guys wore, and I was like,
Well,
okay, that's pretty cool. But
it's like that podcast we were talking about the other day that will remain nameless, to where it was supposedly a Marine that did something very extravagant on a base, and you and I both were like, dude, I don't even think this guy was even in the military, because you could tell
yeah, he took
when you're
orders.
talking to someone,
Yeah, he took
you know,
orders from a junior officer to go
well,
out there, to go eliminate
don't
a,
don't shh, don't
uh,
let's don't bring it up. I don't want to. I
I
don't. The podcast it came from, I got a lot of respect for the dude and like him a lot, and it's not his fault because he doesn't. If you're not in, you're not going to know that. You're not going to know that
and
somebody, when they're talking and they're telling you something,
yeah,
that it's just not even feasible. It's
yeah,
like, so you might as well tell me that and an alien spaceship landed in your front yard, and then a Bigfoot came out, and then you slapped it, and then y'all made up, and then you got married, and you got pictures you want to show me, but the
yeah.
pictures didn't develop. You know what I'm
Nah,
saying?
I
It's
mean
just
that the whole storyline, like when you and I we discussed this, I was like, dude, there is no way in any form of chain of command that could happen. This guy is
no,
better off
never.
climbing a tree with an eagle's nest and burning it. I mean, he's gonna do that. That is a career.
Yeah,
I mean, that is a career ender for the officer that ordered him to go do this.
yeah.
Uh, you
It
know,
was just
di-
way. It
just
was just too much, man.
yeah, and but the problem is there there's those stories out there, and that bothers me because man, in the veteran community, you know. we're supposed to be better than that.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
to me, it sounded like a civilian that had watched a few military movies and liked them and thought he was one of those guys like, I would have joined, but I had asthma, you know,
yeah,
and then just kind of, I don't
yeah,
know, maybe wants attention or whatever. But it
yeah,
really, and normally when stuff like this happens, I keep my mouth shut unless I know somebody who's directly involved.
yeah,
Every once in a while, if
yeah,
there's somebody putting out bad evidence or trying to fake something or whatever, there's
yeah,
only been a handful of times that I've ever said anything. But dude, when you go, you are now disrespecting two extremely important things in
yeah,
my life, and one of those is not the type of thing that you crap all over or you know
yeah,
you lie about.
yeah,
And I don't know. Anyway, we'll move on.
yeah, man. So, um, so quick the quick story number two, and I don't want to get too much into my buddy Mac's story, because I plan on getting him on. He and I we talk from a couple times a year and whatnot, and he's a great guy. Um, Purple Heart recipient. His story of joining the military. Man, I highly respect. I mean, so dude went to college on a rodeo scholarship. So when he told me this, I'm like, "There's rodeo scholarships?" I
Yeah.
said, "Dude, I feel like I was cheated in high school that there was like there was like all these scholarships for like like sports. I had no idea that like calf wrestling could get you a 4-year, scholarship or
Hey,
whatever.
only in Texas, man.
Yeah,
Only in
yeah. You,
Texas.
you know what? So, but you know what? So now he goes to college, and then he walks on as a receiver, and plays college football as a receiver too. And I was like, okay, you know. Then he goes on to coach college ball, in the lower levels, right? I think he was a few colleges, and then arena football team, that the team in LA that Kiss the rock band owned, and then all of a sudden, obviously, 9/11, things kick off, and you know what? He joins the military,
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So
Well,
these
that's impressive in itself.
No, it is, and then, and I said, "Hey, look, I said, best thing you got out of it is that, man, you got a cool scar from shrapnel went through your neck, but yeah, but, so he and we met after all that had happened, but, um, man, so it's so funny because when I had my, sighting, my encounter on the military base and, on the range and whatnot. Man, he's one of my close buddies that I can kind of talk to and tell him about these type, you know, stories.
Right.
And so I tell him, and he goes, "Bro, let me tell you about the time when I was in Afghanistan." So he starts telling me about they were on a cop, and so this is, they weren't too far from Cop Keating. So there's a movie. I think it's on Netflix or something, or Amazon, or about the big firefight there at Cop Keating, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was
There's actually two of them, I think now. I think they
okay,
made another one after it.
yeah. So Max, their unit, they're like two valleys over, right? Um, and when all that stuff was going on, that huge engagement, you know, Matt can tell you this story on his end, that he could hear it all through their talk, their command,
Radio
uh,
chatter.
yeah, and whatnot. But anyways, we start talking about this thing about Bigfoot, right? And I'm telling them, my thing is, dude, let me tell you about the time, when I was in Afghanistan, blah blah blah, and he's telling me, so their outpost, they had these LRAS threes, and so these things, like, they are like a thermal camera, a GPS unit, a scope, laser designator, yeah, all in one package. It's the size of a large microwave. When I say microwave, yeah, I mean a very big square box. Now,
It's like having the thing that fits underneath an Apache on the
Yeah.
nose. It's
Yeah.
like having that with you,
Yeah,
basically, is what it is.
the eye on those things are like this big. I remember we went through training, using those things, and we were watching dudes like on other ranges, like a mile away smoking, right? And they look like they're like 10 feet in front of you, right? And even to the point where, man, when they would inhale a cigarette, man, you could see it just, like the red intensifier, and then you can, fit from white hot to, change, do the color changes.
Right.
But anyway, it's just unbelievable. So this is, like high grade military tech, so that's what they use to scan uh this um high mountain valley that they're in, right? So obviously they're there to keep tracks of anything that's going up and over this valley saddle, because you know what, our enemy there, that was their supply routes, man. They would use little foot goat trails, basically.
Right.
They didn't have, the air support to chopper in ammo and food and water like we did. These, I hate to say it, man, the Hodge, man, they were all on foot.
They're hard.
Yeah,
Some hard dudes.
yeah. So, anyways, their one unit, their LRAS 3 unit that they had, uh, they were called. Yeah, he was called because another troop had spotted something um, through the unit, right? So I guess when Mac gets up to it, he's looking through, and he can see this very large bipedal on two legs thing running across this big rock outcrop above them,
All right,
right?
stop right there.
Yep. Okay.
Stop. No more.
All
We're
right.
gonna
Yeah.
let Mac tell it.
Yeah, man. Because like
Everybody watching this right now is like, what?
yeah,
What?
yeah,
No,
yeah,
but we got seriously, we gotta you gotta get him on there. In fact,
yeah. I will.
whoever's watching this, um, all you SCB fans out there, stay on top of Captain Joe.
Yeah, yeah.
Make
I'll
sure
get
he
him.
gets Mac on here,
Yeah,
because y'all got to hear this story. But it is very tempting,
yep,
but we got to let him tell it,
yeah,
because it's absolutely awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It is. And just the incidents to follow where I left off, is pretty amazing. So,
Yeah,
but
and then
yeah,
there's more things that happen, and then we'll say there's more confirmation, is what we'll say.
yeah,
How about that?
yeah. All right, man. So, the Dogman thing. I know we talked about this before we came on. Now,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I'm not I can't really say, hey, man, I'm a Dogman believer, because a couple years ago I was a Bigfoot non-believer, but until you see one, and
Right,
then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I can check the box that I saw one. I can believe it, right?
right.
Now, I know there's a whole other camp out there of people who are Dogman believers, or
Yeah, there's a
eyewitnesses, man. And again, dude, I have been very blessed in my life to be able to work in the things that I do. Man, I get to spend a lot of time in the outdoors. I get to spend a lot of times behind um, uh, great outdoor hunting products. Working with some of the shows and the entertainers, the manufacturers, the optics companies, and you name it. And I can say, man, I've got to hunt in some amazing places. I've never seen a dog man.
well, that's and that is one of the biggest. I've seen that argument a lot. In fact, I got into a conversation, I think it was last year sometime, and I remember this conversation with a guy. He was former military, and
Yeah,
he was also a large game hunter, big game hunter. He said he'd been all over the world, and
yeah,
he said that if Sasquatch was real, that he would have seen one. Well, you have been all over the world hunting big game, but you didn't see one doing that. You saw one in a military rifle range.
yeah. Where it was not
So,
supposed to be,
right. So
or a
you
human.
don't,
Yeah,
you can't, the thing is, people overestimate their abilities, and
yes,
they're really, I don't know, it's like super arrogant to say that, well, I've been out in the woods a whole lot and hunted a whole lot, and I am this great hunter So if something existed, I would have seen it. Dude, what are you talking about? You can't say that.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
and it's a shame too, because I think if a lot of these guys who are big game hunters and stuff,
Yeah.
with all that experience, all it would take would be they're experts at learning a specific animal,
Hmm.
learning the terrain, learning everything about it, and then finding that animal. And then they do it over and over again. Well, if they would just use those skills and then direct it towards Sasquatch, then, I think a lot of them would be very, very surprised. And you don't know, if you don't know something exists, you're not looking for the signs of it.
Yeah.
So it's just, but the whole point of this was that I'm the same way. I've never come across a track. I don't know anybody personally that's seen one. There's tons of stories out there. And the reason why we bring it up is because I know there are several people that came to our channel from Dark Waters, because I did the
Okay.
podcast over there because they had a
Yeah.
Bigfoot weekend. Well, I wanted to tell the one story that I have of Dogmen, just for those people, because you're not going to see a lot of Dogmen stuff here unless one of us kind of run into it, I guess, or we got a guest that's seen one, but it's just not our specialty. But I will tell you that one of the best stories I've ever heard and some of the best pictures I've ever seen were of Dogmen. Now, I went with a group of individuals, and a couple of them were Sasquatch researchers from a different state. Now, before I even get started, I'm leaving all the information out on who they are, state, the whole 9 yards, because the one thing I asked them, they were still kind of in the middle of this investigation and getting to know the person and everything else. But I asked them, I said, hey, they knew I had a channel. I said, can I tell this story if I leave all the information out on everybody involved? And they said, yes, you can do that. So I'm going to stick to that 100%.
Good.
But so they're not into Sasquatch. I mean, they're not into Dogmen. But they were contacted by an older gentleman, an old Vietnam vet that lived out in this cabin by himself. And apparently he had been researching both species for about 20 years. Now, and he liked what they had to say. He liked their research. So he was wanting to share with them. So he actually got a hold of them. I don't know how exactly. And they wound up going to his house. And the story that they were told was this guy lived there alone in this house. But the property that he was living on, now I really don't know how all that worked. I don't know if he was renting the house from these people or if it was just a part or it was adjacent or whatever. But the property owners, they had this huge piece of land for generations. Another one of those king grants type of situations where it's been in the family since Native Americans, before white men even got here.
Gotcha.
Well, what they had was he got to know them really well. He got to know the older gentleman that owned it, and what they did is they took a big piece of the land around this lake and made it like a public trust where the public could come in and use it. They could camp and fish, and they had a summer camp and everything else there. Now, they were technically still the owners, but they let the public, do certain things on it.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, I can't remember how many there were, but there was like 2 or 3 mysterious deaths out there. And so they shut the whole place down. Well, that guy was talking to the owners, and they told him that it was because of the Dogmen. These were Dogmen attacks. Mm. And now the owner, I think how it worked is he knew about the Sasquatch. They were there for years, and then the Dogmen showed up, and then he kind of got caught up in like investigating both of them. Okay. This dude was hardcore. He would go out and he'd go 3-4 days at a time. And apparently he was a sniper in Vietnam. He would get up in the bushes and just lay there 3 or 4 days, and he would actually put blood on the cameras to try to entice the Sasquatch or the Dogmen. It actually supposedly worked on the Dogmen to come up to the cameras.
Okay.
And he actually got pictures of these things.
Yeah.
And I was shown the pictures. And what I was shown was 3 different pictures. Now, when this guy's telling them, he pulls it up on the computer. And these guys aren't allowed to have it, but they take pictures of the computer screen with their cell phone. So this is what I'm looking at. Okay. So you're talking about is degraded quality.
Yeah.
Well, 3 pictures. One, the first one was of a Sasquatch. It looked like it was about 100 yards away, but it was like I saw it here at my house, full body silhouette, and it was at the top of a hill.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't make out much detail, but you could tell it was definitely looked like a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. The second picture was of a dog man. It looked like it was about 4 feet away from the camera, looking straight into the camera like this.
Like you are now. Okay.
Like I am now. Just looking dead at it. And it was as clear gets.
Okay.
And the third one, which was super impressive, it looked like it was back maybe 20 feet. And I think I saw from like maybe the knees up, and it was sideways like this.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was looking up, but you could see everything from the knees up. And you could even see on the shoulder where it looked like a massive like cut was across its shoulder.
Huh.
And dude, if these pictures were fake, somebody spent money doing it because they were super good. These were not blob squatches. These were really, really good photos. Like you could see details. You could see the pupils in the eyes.
Yeah, so I was
the
going
claws.
to ask like details. I mean, what would it look like? A
It looked like
Hollywood werewolf or what?
Almost, but it looked more dog, more German Shepherd from what I can remember.
So like the shepherds you got.
Like it wasn't right, but give them normal, like give them like human hands or Bigfoot hands and arms. Torso. The legs, I don't remember seeing a lot of legs. I can't remember, but the torso was super skinny. It kind of had that V shape to it, where his upper body was bigger. And
broad shoulder.
Broad shoulder, not massive, but I mean it was big.
Yeah.
Now, along with that, they said that this guy showed them video, and he has security cameras all around his house, right? Yeah. And these dog men, they went into all kinds of stuff about the dog men fighting the Bigfoot and all this crazy stuff.
Okay.
But he actually showed them video of it's from the house, and the camera is pointed out at a shed he's got.
Yeah.
Well, next to the shed is a light pole. There's a light right there on the pole. Now, that light pole is 10 feet off the ground. The bulb is.
Okay.
And he said, the guy telling me this, he said you could see the dog man come up from behind the shed, stop, and look over the top of the light pole.
Whoa, okay.
So you're talking 11 feet tall.
Dude, that's crazy.
And now these guys, I had known about them before I met them. Yeah. I never got the impression that they were making anything up. I mean, I don't know. I don't hang out with them. I don't really know them personally, but from what I gathered when I met them and they were telling me this, I didn't feel like I was being BS'd. And they were very careful to say, look, we believe the guy, but we're building a rapport.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more involved to it. I'm not going to go into all that because it's not really my story to tell. But apparently, these creatures had been in that area since the Native American times. And there were documents specifically talking about the relationship between the Sasquatch and the Native Americans. Okay. Like they would actually come together and trade. And like the large males would stay up at the top of this big bluff and like basically do Overwatch while the Sasquatch women and children were down in this valley with the human women and children while they
Huh.
were trading and stuff.
Huh.
And all this happened before, settlers got there and took over. But it was an extremely awesome story. And
Wow.
I think I'm like 75% sure these guys told this story themselves. So if you come across it, you're probably, I don't know, this may jog somebody's memory. But again, I asked permission before I told it, but I'm going to leave everybody out. If you put two and two together, that's not my fault. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
But I think they've told a lot of the story themselves. But
Man.
that's for you Dogmen fans. That's really the only Dogman story I know of from people that I actually, have met. Now, Mike Taylor, on his episode, he talked about a buddy of his that was a 911 dispatcher and up in North Georgia, and that he told him about a time that the sheriff's department got called out to this farmer's house because one of his horses had the head completely ripped off.
Mm.
Like it wasn't, I'm not talking about like a cat. Like we don't know of any animal that rips the head off of horses. So that was
Yeah.
pretty crazy. You imagine the strength that it would take to pull a
Yeah.
horse's head off.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Man, I mean, I still think that's pretty cool that you saw a picture that you felt confident that this is
oh, they were better than
wow.
anything.
Yeah.
We got some pretty good stuff, man. But these are like still frame. Imagine still frames from the Patterson film, but being a dog man, pretty much is what we were looking at.
Wow.
And they were not. I do not want to run into one. I tell you that. They
Yeah.
do not look.
So these guys who you were with, they're still out researching and
Oh
investigating,
yeah, they
you
still
know,
research now. Their
that
main.
area. Or,
I have not kept up with the story.
okay.
I haven't seen them
Okay.
since.
Okay.
But their main deal is Sasquatch research. This was kind of
Yeah.
I guess because both are involved, this gentleman felt like they'd be interested. And I believe the guy's getting older.
Yeah.
So I think he's kind of looking for somebody to pass it on to. And I hope these guys take it up because they seem like they knew what they were doing and they could definitely handle it. So,
That's good. That's
yeah,
good.
man, it's pretty cool stuff.
No, it is, man. So you did another short video the other day about a call to arms, and you and I and Angie, we had this discussion, just last week about trying to encourage more people, law enforcement, military, park service folks to step up and share any type of stories or encounters that they may have. I
Right.
think it's important, and believe me, it took me a little while to, I'm not going to say like come to my senses, but you know what, get to that point where I'm like, what I saw was what I saw, and
Yeah.
after I did my little bit of research, I was willing to share it, and it's not a career ender, but you know, but I know there's other folks who are like us, that have had these type of uh I- encounters,
Right.
and
And just because we are on camera right now and that
yeah,
we've taken that step, that does not mean you have to do that.
yeah,
If you want, the way StreamYard works is there doesn't have to be a video. We
yeah,
can just do, if you just want to talk and nobody know who you are,
yeah,
that's fine. The information is what we're interested in
yeah,
because we can use that information in the field like we've done with everything else.
yeah,
And you never know when you tell your story, you never know. It may not feel important to you, but you
yeah,
never know when that's going to be the one thing that is the catalyst for other people to open up. We've seen that with Happy Harris.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
had one family member and two different friends come forward and tell him that they had experiences.
Yeah.
Now, none of those people wanted to be involved in the podcast or anything,
Yeah.
but they heard Happy's story and they're like, "Oh, well, crap, he's telling the truth. I guess I am going to too."
Yeah. And
And
this guy, and Happy's held it for what, 30 years almost?
yeah,
His encounter, and you got to think about it, man. He's harbored that question in the back of his head for 30 years,
right.
and you know, when he came forward and reached out to us, and man, he's a good friend to us all now,
I talk to him just about every day now, even
Yeah,
if it's just a couple smart aleck remarks.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
he's just a good guy, and that's how and there are people out there that lie. There's people out there that fabricate things.
Yeah.
They're hoaxsters and pranksters and everything else. But just because somebody tells a crazy story, it doesn't mean it's not true. Just think what would have happened if we would have just been like, dude, that guy's he's full of garbage.
Well,
What would happen if you and I didn't believe him and take a chance on him?
yeah. Well, dude, I
There's
mean,
three of us that wound up having sightings because of Happy.
yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean, dude, I mean, you know what? It. There are great moments in history that's kind of start off that way. You know what? For sure, when Christopher Columbus went to the Queen and said, "Hey, I need a bunch of money and 3 of your ships to sail across the ocean because I think there's land over there."
right?
Like, "Oh yeah, whatever." You
Whatever,
know,
Chris.
exactly, man. You're just crazy, But hey, look how that turned out, right?
Right.
But yeah, you know what? So we encourage, folks, if you want to send an email out to, the encounterbrigade at gmail.com, you know, you can reach us that way, and you know what, you can share your stories. It's funny because, I get on like on our Facebook page, um, and you'll see people commenting here, especially like this last couple weeks where people say, they'll name a region or a state and a year is when I had my encounter,
Right.
and so, and it's neat, because like some of us are like, yeah, we'd love to hear more because,
Right.
whether it's a small detail that, that they're able to explain, that's one more piece of the puzzle,
Oh,
right?
oh, oh, oh. I didn't
Yeah.
tell you. Now that you mentioned that, my wife, believe it or not, was
Miss,
paying attention to
mi-
the comments on Facebook. And there's a guy who was talking about having activity or a sighting, I can't remember, very close to where her father's house was.
oh,
And she used to play in those woods as a kid.
uh,
And she saw that. And she was like, "Oh my God, I know that area really good."
so wait a minute. So you're telling me that she is the Bigfoot whisperer because now that you two are married and
Oh yeah.
you're living where you're at and you've got them coming up to your house now, dude, they've been following her.
Well, the only thing that I hope is that my wife does not get interested in Sasquatch because
It's
she can pretty much do everything better than me. So if she gets involved in this, I'm going to be highly, highly insulted. So I
well,
think I'm going to have to kick her out of the group
oh man,
just just to save my own pride. I
Miss,
think this is what's
Mrs.
going to happen.
Mrs. Twobears, we definitely need her stepping up. I mean,
she'll hey, she'll take over.
oh man, dude. You know what? I mean, so that's so funny. So a a Facebook viewer or fan or someone came to our page and made a comment, and it was of an encounter, and it was like where she grew up at.
Yes.
Wow.
And just on the
Has she replied back or?
no, I don't. I really don't know. I have to ask her. She just got home with my daughter, so we'll have to wrap this up. But
Okay.
actually, another one too.
Wow.
A response to I made a video tonight saying that we were going to talk about the Giant of Kandahar.
Yeah.
Somebody commented, and if this is you, please contact us, the Encounter Brigade at gmail.com.
Hmm.
They replied that I think she said her husband was involved in
Ooh,
that some way, somehow. I've got to go back and look at the comments.
that would be phenomenal.
Yes, we
Yeah.
need to talk to her. I didn't forget, but I almost didn't want to say anything until I actually talked to the individual. But I mean, the cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk to them. Actually, when we get off here, I will send her a message. I think it was on. That's the problem is we got different platforms and the
Yeah.
comments get mixed up. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'll find her and I will ask her, and then
Yeah.
maybe we can. That would be awesome if that's what's going on, and her husband was involved. It'd be great to get him on.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
All right.
small world, man.
Yeah, it
That's what
is. It
happens
is.
when you share information. You know.
Yeah. And you know what? And it's those little things that, and details that come out that may help a property owner or someone that's in the field themselves, so that's good.
Well, I say it all the time. That's how I got to where I'm at is by listening to other people's stuff. That helped me more than anything else. Other researchers, uh, none of that. What really helped was listening to you guys come forward with your stories.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, all right,
All
man.
right.
Well, I appreciate it
All right,
and
man.
excellent stories, dude. Hope
Yep.
get your buddy Mac on here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna work on them first thing in the morning.
All right.
All right, man. You have a good evening, and thank you to everyone that's tuned in.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye.